Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Morgan Whittington. This is the Jack of One Trade podcast. I'm joined here today by William Pleasant.
Thank you, Morgan, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on this my first podcast. I'm a student at Thomas Nelson Community College. I just resumed. I had been going to courses during the 2000s and got away from it. And I guess with the pandemic and everything, I needed to have to be more active and involved in something. So I did two things. I enrolled in a creative writing course with Mrs. Janice Hoffman, and also joined the Club of Students for Social Justice and Equality. And right now, I'm glad I did both, because it is allowing me to, even though I am pretty much locked down, I'm able to interact with people, and in some cases even do a little bit of participation. I think I'll defer to you. I see your name on the list of members, and I think you've been on it or interacted with the club more than I. I mean, I don't mind mentioning what I've seen and observed and participated in so far, but I think I'll defer to you on describing the club and its goals, mission, and everything.
Okay. Yeah, I think like we were talking about earlier before we started the podcast, we probably have an equal amount of knowledge on this club, if not more. I know that you probably have a little more time of working on the discussion boards and such in that club, but we're both in the Social Justice and Equality Club at Thomas Nelson, and I think that it just does a really good job on addressing topics of injustices in our society. I feel like it's a place where talk is not cheap. I think that people listen to each other, and that fostering that understanding is so important, especially in this day and time when we're getting just so many different things and information from the news, and we don't always understand it completely. And just having a space to have those discussions, I think, is really important. So this club it's that space. It allows students to talk openly about things and try to understand things in a safe environment.
Okay.
Go ahead. Mr. Pleasant, I actually learned about your writing through this club. So I saw, I wrote something on cancel culture, and originally I wrote it because I didn't understand it.
Okay.
And I wrote it down because I was trying to, in my head, figure out what I thought about it, where I stood on that, and then try to learn from other people what they thought about it to get a better understanding of what cancel culture is and everything people are saying about it. And then I saw you did a reply on that post, and I've seen you had a couple other writings up there as well. And I just think they're really powerful. They're really inspirational, and I would love if you could share some of those on our podcast today.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to do that. My poetry, especially for the course, runs a variety of different themes and topics. Some are political. Most of them have to do with a variety of different things, not even having to do with social justice or politics. The cancel culture response that I submitted into the canvas for students for social justice and equality, because I sense an intense passion in Paul, because it was precipitated by his writings on cancel culture. And to be frank, my introduction to that phrase began to recently be exposited through Fox News, because I heard a lot of conservatives using it as a weapon to counter non-conservative views of people who had inadvertently said something that a lot of people found offensive, and it resulted in either the organization they work for or sponsors or others deciding that this person was no longer needed to be supported because that wasn't the feeling of the organization or the sponsor. And of course, conservatives are saying, well, this is a kind of a threat to their freedom of speech, so and so forth. But I wanted to expand what cancel culture really means. Historically, it has been used to basically cancel out undesirables, initially from people in the state, whether it be a totalitarian state or others. And it has migrated into sometimes in this social platform now with Facebook and other things, where if you go viral with something that people find offensive, there's a lot of pressure on that on both sides of the political spectrum. So I wanted to write about that and also include in cancel culture a lot of people who have not been never were really recognized as contributors to our culture and to our country because of either race or sex or times when there was, let's say, much less inclusion of those people and their contributions. So I wanted to write that response because I was inspired. If nothing else, Paul will inspire you.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote that. I'm open to any of the poetry that I've written. I've pretty much copied a lot of that or have it ready for a presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to read some of your poetry, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Give me a second. You may not see me on the screen for a second. I'm going to be reading from, well, wait a minute. Let me hold on a second.
You're fine. And like I said, a lot of your writing I learned about through that club, and I just thought that it did very well to explain things that I may not have understood, or at least show things from a different viewpoint than I may not have thought about before, which is one of the things I really appreciate that club for, just learning about things from a different viewpoint.
Okay. Well, let's start off with a short poem that was inspired by my wife. It was a Shakespearean sonnet that Mrs. Hoffman used as a guideline for us to do the assignment. And I was thinking about my wife, and the inspiration of this is just more so than I think most people a lot of people, so not everybody likes to be intimate with another person in terms of physical touch, but hugs, you hear a lot now about people sending virtual hugs and so forth. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's certainly not enough with my wife. So I want real hugs. And every time when I go too long without them, I feel like I'm missing them. And I wanted to write a poem about how important those touches and I call it comforting is from her hugs. She does it every day, and it's probably one of the reasons we've been together so long. Been married nearly 42 years. That's right.
Wow.
Isn't that right, Rochelle? Is she still on? Oh, she might not be on.
Yes.
This poem is called Lady Comfort. Her gentle presence comforts unaware. The absence of her touch and warmth resigns. A hug reveals a beating heart of care and satisfies as our arms intertwine. Beneath the elm tree leaves block light, and shadows hover on her face and hair. Like flickering butterflies, swarms in flight. They herald comfort in the breezy air. Passage of time depletes my sated need to have her near me like a warming coat. This craving for her comfort is a plea, a perpetual desired presence of note. So beckons come and go, and signs ignore. Comfort oft knows not its great reward. And I got an A on that one.
I can see why.
And like I say, one of the things I've learned from Mrs. Hoffman is that all art forms, whether it be writing, poetry, prose, novels, fiction, painting, sculpture, dance, the most impactful pieces and creativity in it comes from something that comes from your heart. You know, they used to make a saying that you shouldn't wear your heart on your sleeve, but that's not the best approach, in my view, for an artist or a person that is using some kind of art form to relate to other people. Your emotions are very critical to helping to inspire you to press to do something artistic. And that's certainly the case with this poem.
It's a very heartfelt poem. I really enjoyed listening to it as well. And I agree with what you just said there about wearing your heart on your sleeve and emotions and things of that sort. Because one of the things that I've noticed recently is inspiration and even emotion sometimes. They're such fickle creatures. You don't know. Once you block them out, sometimes It's difficult to get that back. Exactly.
And once you block them out, it's difficulty in getting it back is exactly why I did the poem based on the verdict of Chauvin yesterday. At around midnight, I was starting to feel, as my wife uses the phrase a lot, some kind of way about everything that has transpired since George Floyd was murdered by Chauvin. And the nearly 1 year, it's been, I think, 11 months since it actually occurred. And once I observed what became the climax in the courtroom of the verdict and the finding of the jurors, there were emotions flowing through me that I couldn't quite grasp and say, what do these emotions really mean? So that inspired me to say, hey, think about it and write a poem. And I think I sent that to you just so you could see it ahead of time too. But those are the kinds of things that I think will inspire poetry. Now, sometimes the motivation is, I want to get a good grade for this course. So you try to do your best based on academics, which I guess there's nothing really wrong with that. But I have one here. This one is on. It's called. There was an assignment she gave where she gave topics that she wanted us to base our poetry on, and one of the topics was a graveyard. And so this poem is called "The Stillness of the Departed." Instinctively, my pace slows and my steps gently touch the ground in respect to the still bodies buried below, as if they could be disturbed by stomping or march by a group of the living above. The monoliths engraved with surnames of various souls stand erect. In the distance, a grounds crew prepares for a burial, with tents and chairs in rows by the grave. A yellow backhoe seems out of place among gray granite pedestals and parties dressed in black. Flowers laid at headstones contrast with lawns green. Quiet and stillness dominate as processionals gather. A clergyman stands at the end of a grave. Loved ones sit and tears and tissues appear. A hearse stands ready as a casket is drawn for the interment. After ceremonial respects, flowers are placed stem by stem. The stoic graveyard resumes as attendees return to the land of the living. Certainly is, if you live long enough, lived as long as I have, you're going to have occasions where you're going to have to attend a funeral and go to an interment. And because that was the topic that was assigned, I drew on my emotions and feelings and observations of some of those events that I had attended. That's what generated this poem.
It's a really good poem. It's really descriptive, and you don't even have to know the topic is graveyard to know that you're talking about a graveyard, because you explain not just the colors, but some of the feelings that people feel when they step through or have something like that happen to a loved one, just being in a graveyard atmosphere.
This next one is a not basically non-political, but I'll do one that's political after this one. This is fairly short as well. It's called Gull Church, as in seagull.
Okay.
The aerodynamic birds stand in congressional homage. The sun wanes. A reddish-orange hue paints feathers laid flat. Stained gulls with reflections from the orange set sky. The radiant warmth and amber orb sermon have the avian eyes squint in quiet stare. The quest for food, a secondary task, as nature's radiant chamber repels the chill of ocean breezes. Beaks rarely open and silence takes hold. The high-pitched squawks and screeches unheard, nor can unruly behaviors over morsels be seen, like Paul's admonishment on proper communion behavior to the Corinthians. This gull assembly gathers on warmed sand from the solar heat stored in granules, plenty, while others meet on the planks of the pier. Both yield to a doctrine of rising temperate rest. Socially distant birds emit no threat or of malevolence like Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Most humans nonetheless give them wide berth to avoid disturbing worship of the god Helios. Unleashed pets scurry and scatter congregates as gulls depart in symphonic escaping flight. And my wife and I, we love going to beach. We go to a local beach here, Buckrow Beach. And we try to go on times and days when we're one of few people out on the beach. So we have kind of like the beach to ourselves, and our companions tend to be flocks of seagulls. We usually bring a little lunch with us. And of course, once we start eating, they start slowly stepping towards our beach chairs as if they're expecting to be fed. But particularly towards near the end of the day, this imagery that this poem reflects, which again, Mrs. Hoffman is very strong on all types of writing, using a lot of what she calls imagery and color to make the piece more interesting to the reader. And so that was the inspiration to that poem.
Yeah, I like that one. It's a very bright poem, and I just like the imagery and stuff of the seagulls on the beach. It's really cool. It kind of brings you to another place when you hear it.
Okay. Let's see. This one was inspired by the 6th of January, and I guess I don't need to do any more explanation of that. You'll hear it in the poem. It's called Stampeded 6th. Ceremonial counts of electoral votes, eclipsed by twisted rails and posts. The president of the Senate performs the notes of Article 2, Section 1, prescribed in votes. A wave of rioters scale steps and walls as Old Glory, Confederate flags, and Trump flags float up the Capitol like debris in a tsunami. Barriers removed and barriers torn down. Capitol Police press radio call buttons, pleading for reinforcements to stem the assault. Warnings to depart the premises go unheeded as the onslaught encroaches. Yells of, "Where's Nancy? Get Mike Pence." Calls for "Stay back," echoing "Stand by" and "Stand back." Muffled, calmer tones. Media edits the human defecation smeared on marble statues and carpets. Double doors to chambers become contests of butting oxen on both sides of the barrier. Pipes smashing glass panels in doors meant for ingress and egress of public servants. The press, Congress, staffers, and viewing public watch in disbelief, seeing offices rifled, furniture overturned, documents strewn over Capitol floors, and Congress whisked to safe zones unknown by intruders, at a loss for what to do next. With the world watching, the stampede is repelled by guardsmen, riot control police, and bolstered and holstered Capitol Police exhausted. Arrests and charges of apprehended and escaped, guaranteeing 2021 court dockets filled to the brim. Constitutional requirements resume, and president and vice president certified turn the page of history. And again, I was inspired, obviously, by what I saw. And I've been told that by a person that, well, not by that person, but I've heard second and third hand from a person that was actually in the Capitol, that the public, general public, has no idea how violent that riot was inside the Capitol. The press did not even come close. They did some document. I think Frontline did a documentary showing more of some of the things that happened during that episode, but it was just definitely historic, unprecedented. And again, unless you got ice water for veins, you emotions are going to kick in. Well, whether you do anything about it, as far as using some of your artistic talent, that's up to the individual. But I felt that to write that poem.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. It's a really good poem, just like all the other ones you've read these past few minutes. Um, but when I saw that on the TV initially, when that attack had happened on the Capitol, it's just like you said, I had no idea what I was feeling at the time, but it was something. I didn't know what it was. I still don't know what it was, but I was a little shocked by it. You know, you don't expect to see something like that in America because the view, the TV view, the even some of the media view that we give of the America we live in is different than what you actually see every day when you go
Yeah.
outside.
And that's a concern I have as an older American citizen to the younger generation, is that they somehow we must convey to them, to all of you, that a lot of this is unprecedented. That you know, they, not even the Confederate Army was able to get their flag inside the Capitol during the Civil War. I mean, that just did not happen. There's just, and certainly we didn't. I can't. Nobody can think of a situation where a president was a cheerleader of activities that led to that riot. Now, whether he could be convicted of actually instigating an insurrection, I think that's still to be determined. But I don't know how much closer he could have come to doing that. That's unprecedented for a president to speak in those terms. So it's important that the young people understand that this is not the norm. This is, and having people trying to overturn an election during the counting of the votes in Congress to certify the election, that's just not present. That's not the way the Constitution reads. So it was just horrifying to see that, especially for older ones. And a lot of people who have given their lives towards supporting the ideals of the Constitution just basically saw it trashed. And that should not be happening. And certainly a country as big as this one and as complex as this one, we shouldn't have to, its citizenry shouldn't have to deal with stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like right now, and I'd love to just sit down one day and figure it all out. You know, that's the dream for a lot of people. It'd be great to just figure out what's causing such a huge divide, because there's so many people when you talk to them and it seems like I don't know, they just have like good intentions in mind, and it seems like what they're talking about, what they're saying would make a good place to live in, but then what we're seeing is completely different than some of the stuff that we're talking about. And I guess that's what I was saying earlier about the Social Justice Club. I was saying that talk is not cheap in that club, because I feel like we actually go out into the world and act upon some of the things that we say, while otherwise in the media you have these people that can hide behind that internet and say all of these things and never make any actions upon the words that they're saying.
Okay. Well, I don't know how many more minutes we have. I have a few more poems I can read. Also, I mean,
I'm happy for you to present as many as you'd like to. We have as long as you need.
Okay. Well, this one is again non-political. This is called Night Landing. And over the years, before I retired from federal service, I used to have to go to different parts of the country. And that was when I first started doing that back in the early 80s. That was the beginning of my regular use of airlines to travel. Prior to that, I hadn't done much flying. So this is an example also where the initial part of the poem, you know, we do peer review and comments online in the platform Canvas, where other students in the class can make suggestions, comments, or make us aware of errors that we've made to improve our whatever writing piece we're doing. And the beginning of this is a direct result of one of the students suggesting something that they felt might enhance this poem. So I like that about class, about peer review. I think it's helpful to have other eyes see your work and offer some suggestions. This is called Night Landing. The chance to repeat Icarus's folly of flying too high, no longer a hazard, as Sol, S-O-L, conceals beyond the horizon Daedalus' warning of wax wings melting unheeded. These are not applicable as absence of light dominates space. A sea of darkness permeates outside my window. Lights bright and dim pepper ground and sky. Aircraft engines whine as the plane approaches a landing strip, distant but growing in size. Vehicles move like lit bugs and beetles. Headlighted rows exhibit serpentine movement. Streetlights shed stillness around them. Gravity and momentum press passengers in seats like clothing stuffed in an overfilled drawer. Rapid lights parallel the plane as runway approaches. Touchdown roughens the smooth glide heretofore. A last burst of jet engines whine as aircraft slows and cabinet lights shine. A pilot gives last-minute instructions, thanking passengers for flying their airline. Overhead compartment doors pop open. Carry-on luggage emerges into owner's arms. Clustered lines migrate as fresh air chills faces. Greeting loved ones jump up and down. Grins and smiles pronounce safe arrivals. Taxis and Ubers make their rounds. Luggage awaits as carousels give birth to brown, black, turquoise, red, and beige suitcases and suit bags. Slowly they parade on conveyors in ovals, wheels kissing the floors, and belongings lag to awaiting parked vehicles or transports scheduled. Okay, yeah, I think most people who have flown flights before can relate to it, especially a night landing.
Yeah, I've flown on a couple planes before, but it was mainly just for one trip, just a back and forth planes. One thing that I've learned is that the size of the plane matters a lot, because if it's a bigger plane, you feel pretty safe, but you get on those little ones and it's like the sides are rattling off and you get a little turbulence and suddenly people's faces are like stuck to the windows and people are fearing for their lives, praying. The little ones are a little more difficult to fly on.
Well, one of the nice things about poetry is that it unearths the commonality of experience of our humanity and our experiences. And my wife can attest to this as well. When we've flown in the past, it became more popular for airlines to make more profit to schedule connecting flights. And often on the East Coast, particularly Southeastern flights, and some going to the Northeast, the connecting flight would be on a much smaller propeller plane. And as you know, the physics of flying a propeller plane in gusts of wind is a whole lot different than large jets, jumbo jets and what have you. So I agree with you totally. If you're on that kind of plane, particularly, you better be ready for some turbulence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you have one more poem for us.
Well, let's see which one you want me to read. I have the one that I posted in the social justice club. It's called Persistence. It has to do with the Central Park Five. Let's see. I have one. I don't think I did read. It's called The Show. It has to do with going to a concert, kind of like a Broadway-based symphony concert. And let's see here. I have one that was inspired by the passing of one of my sisters, the oldest sister, who recently passed from COVID.
Sorry.
And thank you. And I was obviously inspired by the emotions that brought up. I am the youngest and the only male among my siblings. I have 3 sisters, 1 twin sister, and I had 2 older sisters. One is now passed. My oldest sister is still living. But when you're siblings and even when you're in distance from each other, you have a whole life history of you being together in this world. And then when one day comes, even if it's somewhat expected, it's a hard change for them to no longer be present. So I was inspired to write a poem about her. And then I can do that one, or the one that's called Persistence, that has to do with the Central Park Five.
I'll let you choose, Mr. Pleasant. They all sound wonderful.
All right. So since I'm probably here because Paul read this poem in Canvas that I had posted on the module in Canvas. So I will read this one because I probably would not. I won't say I wouldn't be here, but
Pleasant, you're here because I think you're awesome. That's the reason.
Thank you, Morgan. Well, here we go. Persistence. I entered the ring of contest. Oh, I'm sorry. That is not the one. I don't think I have that one prepared, ready to read.
It's okay.
Well, since I don't have it, let me go back to my sisters.
I know that for a lot of people, their childhood is kind of the highlight, the happier parts of their life. So you can see how losing a sibling, because they're such a big part of childhood, would be very, very difficult.
It is. Just give me a second. Let's see. Okay, this is called a Reminder Relic. Her warm smile shines the room. The glossy figure centered in the foreground. Her dress welcomes and reassures, with folded hands in front, airing all is well. This picture protrudes a fond memory of a sister who left this world never to return. A Tiffany lamp stands adjacent the frame to remind all of her lighted countenance, her laughter and playfulness unconcealed. As the still image lights and prods the viewer to smile with her, regardless of circumstance. She did that through difficult trials not shown by the limits of photography. Her gift in this pose was to remind all in life that a person wounded and damaged can still smile again, A snapshot in time may not tell the whole story. She says with her smile, whatsoever things are lovely, think on these things. And that was, again, cathartic. She was a special woman. She had one of the things when I say the word damaged, she, among several trials, she had 2 of her children that passed before she did. And they were adults when they passed. But there were other trials that she had in her life, but somehow she found a way to smile. And what was happening, my wife found a photograph she had taken of my sister at our house, at our home here in Virginia. And she had it framed. And a friend of mine who extended condolences when he found out that my sister had passed, sent a miniature Tiffany lamp. And so what we have now in our family room is a Tiffany lamp next to the framed picture of my sister smiling. And that image right there is what inspired this poem.
Wow. She sounds like she was a very kind and strong woman from what you told me now.
Yes. I think if you knew the entire history, you would definitely say she was a strong woman. She was human. She hurt and she cried, but she was, and I don't want to even use the term bounce back. She recovered to the point where she felt like she could present herself to help other people feel better about themselves, which is not always easy to do once you've gone through some of these trials.
Yeah, I mean that's a kindness beyond words, because you're giving up so much of yourself to help others.
So I guess that's all. I have one or two more, but I think that'll probably do for today. Unless you have any more you want me to do.
That's good. Unless you want to talk about the other 2, I can wrap up our podcast. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I end your podcast here?
No, other than the fact that I'm very appreciative, very grateful for this opportunity. Like I said, some of my pandemic lockdown situations that inspired me to try to do things like get into a course where I could become involved. And now leading up to being on a podcast, it helps me to develop and cultivate what talent I have, and try to use it to maybe help other people.
Yeah, you definitely have talent too from the poems that I just heard. So I appreciate you coming on today. I really do.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to wrap up our podcast. Thank you all for tuning in to Jack of One Trade.
Thank you.